Alright, so this is my Week 9 UFL Power Rankings. Let's get started. Starting off with our top performances. You guys can mostly look at this yourself. I'm not really too worried about it. I will go over some of the quarterback stuff. Troy Williams, 5 for 11, 36 yards. Not very good, right? Because that wasn't an entire game. He had 36 passing yards in an entire game. That's pretty bad. Kevin Hogan in that same game had only 92 yards and 3 interceptions. So, although that game was actually pretty entertaining and it was a close game, there was some horrible quarterback play. Jamar Smith was pretty good there with Birmingham. Had 3 touchdowns, over 300 total yards. Did have 2 turnovers to go with it, but he still played pretty solid. Max Dugan, as a passer, not great, but 54 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Kind of makes up for his poor passing performance. Danny Etling stepped in for Bryce Perkins, and he was really good. Solid completion percentage, had 3 touchdowns on the day. Jalen McClendon threw the ball 50 times, but he was decent doing it. He had over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also had 2 turnovers. Lou Perez, similar story, nearly 50 pass attempts, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, and also 2 turnovers. Then you got Jordan Teami, who was really good. He had over 240 yards with 2 touchdowns. He also had a receiving touchdown in this game on a cool little trick play, so that was fun. But moving on from there, we got number 8, the San Antonio Brahmas. They went 1-7 this week, they're 1-7 right now. Worst record in the league. They played the Memphis Showboats and lost 24-22 in overtime. So it was a good game, fun game to watch. Close game going into overtime, entertaining. But there's just a lot of poor offensive performances, especially from the quarterbacks themselves. The Brahmas actually did outgain the Showboats by 120 yards. They had 120 more offensive yards than them, and they still ended up losing this game. They had 3 turnovers to 2 takeaways, so a lot of turnovers in this game, not helping San Antonio. Moving on from there, we have number 7 as the Memphis Showboats. So 2-6, getting that win here over the San Antonio Brahmas, 24-22 in overtime. These are easily the worst 2 teams in the league, but Memphis got the win this week, so I have to move them ahead of San Antonio. Troy Williams, like I mentioned earlier, was very bad in this game, but it looks like going forward they're either going to be going with AJ Perry or Dresser Wynn. So hopefully that is the case, because I do not need to see any more Troy Williams. I really don't need to see any more AJ Perry, but it is what it is. Again, having 120 less yards than San Antonio and still winning this game is pretty impressive for Memphis, but again, you're playing San Antonio, so just even a win against San Antonio is not all that impressive. But moving on from there, we have the Houston Roughnecks at number 6. So they're 3-5 on the year. They had a decent game. They lost 30-18 here versus the Michigan Panthers. Can't be too upset because, again, the Panthers are really good. Even with Danny Etling instead of Bryce Perkins, the Panthers are still a really good team. But in this game, the Roughnecks outgained the Panthers by almost 200 yards. They had 441 yards of offense compared to 254 yards for Michigan. So they had a bunch more yards, and they ended up losing this game. The common theme we've actually seen in all 4 games this week. But the thing that kind of ruined it for Houston, they had 2 turnovers to Michigan's 0. So losing the turnover battle like that, obviously not ideal, and that definitely was the difference maker here in this game for Houston. Number 5 is going to be the Arlington Renegades. So they did really good offensively. They lost 33-30 here versus the DC Defenders, and the Defenders have been really good offensively all season long. So you're not too upset. After the fact, you're not too upset. But again, they were within field goal range towards the end of that game, and Louis Perez, instead of spiking the ball, kind of did like a fake spike and threw a pass to the sideline, which then ended up getting picked off and sealed the game. He very easily could have just spiked the ball, kicked the field goal, go into overtime, see what happens. But no, he decided that he could be smarter than the defense, and it turned out they were ready for it, and he kind of looked stupid afterward. But I still don't want to, take that away from Arlington in this game as a whole, because they still played really good. Just Lou Perez made a bad decision there at the end of the game. But they also, like I mentioned earlier, they outgained DC and lost this game. It's happened in all 4 games this week. That's pretty interesting to note. But yeah, Arlington sitting at number 5. They're obviously a good team, at times, but they're just not quite there, man. Number 4, Birmingham Stallions. So they're 5-3. There's 3 other teams that are 6-2 right now, so it makes sense for them to be here at number 4. And they had a 1-point loss to the Battlehawks this week, 29-28. They also outgained the Battlehawks by nearly 100 yards. And they had 3 turnovers this week, but they also had 3 takeaways. So this game was a turnover fest. 6 total turnovers in this game. Yeah, it was still a high-scoring game with both teams barely missing out on 30 points. So even with a lot of turnovers, it was still high-scoring, still good offense at times for sure, and a very, very fun game for both sides. Birmingham just happened to be on the short end of the stick, so they are going to be down here at number 4. And the number 3 is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks. That should be a 3 instead of a 4. They're going to drop 1 spot because mostly because of their turnovers. They had 3 turnovers in this game, and they got outgained by 100 yards. Right? It just their defense was good enough to get those 3 takeaways to help them win this game. Max Dugan was good as a rusher, not so much as a passer. That's why I moved him down 1 spot, because I definitely trust the quarterbacks on the teams above them more than I do Max Dugan, and I trust the offense of the team above them as a whole more than I do the Battlehawks offense, because the Battlehawks are prone to a lot of turnovers. But moving on from there, we have the DC Defenders at number 2. They're going to jump ahead of the Battlehawks there. They had a good win, 33-30 versus the Arlington Renegades. As we already mentioned, they got a game-sealing interception pretty much as time expired when the Renegades very easily could have been in field goal range and pushed that game to overtime. So they kind of got a break from Lou Perez not having the smartest ideas, but it still worked out because, DC, they still had to make a good defensive play. Even if it was a stupid offensive decision, they still had to make the good defensive play and get that interception. So not taking anything away from them. And then number 1, of course, is going to be Michigan Panthers. So they won this week without Bryce Perkins. They dominated pretty much offensively, putting up 30 points without Bryce Perkins. Denny Etling looked really solid in this game. Now going forward, you obviously want Bryce Perkins to be the quarterback for this team, but since they've already clinched the playoff spot, since they cannot have a home field advantage even if they have a better record than Birmingham, it doesn't really make any sense to rush Bryce Perkins back. His injury shouldn't be too severe, so he should be back for the playoffs if they do decide to rest him these last couple of games. But there also is a chance that he's able to play in week 9. So I'm not too worried about that quarterback issue, because obviously if Denny Etling is the quarterback versus Bryce Perkins, I probably would drop him a couple of spots, because even though Denny Etling played really good this week, he's still nowhere near the level of Bryce Perkins. That's going to be it for that. Looking at our conference standings here, we got the DC Defenders and St. Louis Battlehawks both at 6-2, although the game is 100% going to be in St. Louis due to a conflict of scheduling with DC's stadium. So that doesn't really matter for these two teams the last couple weeks of the season. And then Arlington at number 3 at 3-5, and San Antonio Brahmas at 1-7 down there. And in the USFL, you have the Panthers at 6-2, Stallions at 5-3, although the Stallions are going to be hosting that game even if they have the worse record than the Panthers because of a scheduling conflict. Certainly not ideal for DC and Michigan, who very well could be the number 1 seeds and have to play an away game in the playoffs. It doesn't necessarily seem fair, but that's where we're standing. And then you got Houston down there at 3-5 and Memphis at 2-6. So now we're going to get into our quarterback power rankings. There's quite a bit of movement here. At the top, it pretty much stays the same. Bryce Perkins, Tayamu, and Perez all at 1, 2, and 3. Perkins did not play this week, so I couldn't really drop him down, even though Tayamu and Perez both had really solid games. Then we're going to see, Dresser Wynn move up 1 spot. Jalen McClendon move up 1 spot, and then Manny Wilkins actually drop a couple. So the Dresser Wynn and Manny Wilkins was kind of just me reevaluating my situation. Those guys did not play, but I just reevaluated a little bit. And Jalen McClendon, I thought played good enough to move ahead of Manny Wilkins this week. Then you got number 7 is Jamar Smith. He was really good. He looked solid in his 1 drive they had the last week, but it was just a small sample size, so I didn't want to move him up too high. Now he jumps up here to number 7. I feel like that's pretty fair for now. Again, if he plays another game and does kind of what he's been doing, he can move up even higher, but he still has a pretty limited sample size. Then you got Nolan Henderson just dropping below Jamar. Max Dugan, similar story. He jumps up a couple of guys, but also below a couple of guys, right? So I'm not going to get into the details there, but then Denny Etling comes in at number 10, and he jumps up a bunch, right? He was down at number 18. Like the limited time he was getting in the first like 5 games of the season, he didn't look that good. And then he comes out this week and has, nearly 200 total yards with 3 touchdowns on a good completion percentage. Very, very good game. So he definitely moves up quite a bit of spots. Then you got a couple other guys dropping just below. Danny Etling, Jamar Smith, who jumped up. Then down here you have Kevin Hogan at number 15, who drops quite a bit of spots, as well as Troy Williams at 16, who drops quite a bit of spots. Both those guys played really bad this week. Kevin Hogan, less than 100 yards and 3 interceptions. Troy Williams, again, 36 passing yards in an entire game. Right? Both those guys played horrible this week. So they find themselves dropping down quite a bit. And then the last little switch here is you have Holton Allers jumping ahead of Mike DeLillo because he did get a rushing touchdown this week. So I suppose he moves ahead of Mike DeLillo, but that's not too big of a deal. Next up is going to be our attendance. So Memphis and San Antonio had about 9,200, which is 3,000 less than San Antonio's average, but it is right around San Antonio's average, excluding their home opener where they had 14,000. They had roughly 9,800 or so last week, and they dropped down 600 this week, but still a really solid number, even if it is below their average. And then Michigan versus Houston had barely 4,000, which is down from their average of 6,000. I mean, Houston's attendance has just been awful all season, and this week was no different. Then Birmingham and St. Louis did crack that 30,000 again. Their average is just below 30. This one just got above 30. That's a good sign to see that they're still going to be able to get around that 30,000 average. And then Arlington and DC had 14,600. That's a really good sign. I believe that's the best mark all season. Their average is only 12,600, so definitely above average there. And then overall, we are below average by about 600, but again, that is in large part due to Houston just sucking and San Antonio's average being pretty inflated due to their home opener. Next up is going to be our TV viewership. So the Memphis and San Antonio on Friday night had 573,000 viewers on Fox, just 40,000 below Friday night's average. Not too bad, but again, you would like it to be, closer to that average or even above average ideally, but not a horrible number to say the least. Then you got Michigan and Houston and Birmingham and St. Louis, which was a split broadcast, both at 11 o'clock, I believe, something like that. They're both at the same time on Saturday, and they had 591,000 combined viewers, which is about 30 to 40,000 less than Fox's average outside of Friday Night Football. Had it have been not a split broadcast, we might have seen those numbers change. I'm not exactly sure if they would have been higher or lower, to be honest. But it is kind of stupid that they had a split broadcast when there were 0 NBA playoff games that day. There was no NBA playoff games on Saturday, and that's the day we're gonna have our split broadcast. I know they obviously made the broadcast schedule before they knew all the NBA playoff broadcast schedules, but you feel like they maybe could have flexed something because it just doesn't make any sense. You have 2 UFL games going on at the exact same time when the whole entire day was open with not that many major sports going on. And then we do have Arlington and DC have 973,000 on ABC, which I believe is our highest viewed UFL game of the year, and very much ahead of ABC's average at 840,000. So our average this week is actually about 4,000 higher than the average of all these channels combined previously, and in large part that is due to ABC being so high above average. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list, and bye.